born in the land of riches, gold, oil, diamond bright. But our streets are stained with blood, but the youth fight for their rights. Protesting for a future, yet they're slaughtered in the night. While the leaders sit in silence, flying private jets in flight. They drive their bulletproof cars while we walk these streets. Say there's no money, but their jets fly with ease. Our children starve, but they're too blind to see. Muguland, why can't we be free? Muguland, Muguland. We're crying out for change, but they shoot us on the streets. Muguland, Muguland. We have all it takes to be great, but only corruption is great in the land. They say no money's left, but the rich keep getting fat. Their wrists shine with diamonds, private jets, imagine that.
The news of Chief BIsola Eleniyan's death swept through Iyanla city like the Harmattan wind, dry and unrelenting. For decades, the chief had been a towering figure in the city's political landscape, a man whose influence stretched across the length and breadth of Muguland. To many he was a father, a mentor, a kingmaker. To BIsola Eleniyan he had been all that and more, a guiding hand, a protector, and the man who had given him a name and a purpose. The funeral rites were held in a grand yet austere manner befitting a man of Chief Eleniyan's stature and faith. The mosque was packed to the rafters with dignitaries, political elites, business magnates, and community leaders, all gathered to pay their respects. The air was thick with the solemn recitations of the Quran, the rhythmic cadence of the verses echoing through the sacred space as the chief imam of Iyanla city led the prayers. BIsola sat among the mourners, his head bowed, his heart heavy. The loss of his mentor left a void that was as deep as it was unexpected. The chief had been the anchor in his life, the man who had helped him navigate the treacherous waters of Iyanla city politics. Without him, BIsola knew he would need to be even more vigilant, even more ruthless if he was to survive and thrive in the cutthroat world he had chosen. After the prayers, the chief's body was carried out of the mosque, wrapped in simple white cloth, as per Islamic tradition. The burial was swift, dignified, and devoid of the extravagance that so often marked the passing of the powerful in Muguland. The simplicity of the ceremony only underscored the profound respect in which Chief Eleniyan was held. As the last shovelful of earth was placed on the grave, the mourners began to disperse, their faces solemn, their voices hushed. BIsola lingered, staring at the freshly turned soil, struggling to come to terms with the finality of it all. He was alone with his thoughts when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "You're not alone, BIsola." The voice was soft yet commanding, a voice that BIsola had come to respect and fear. He turned to see Iyanla Eleniyan standing a few feet away, her regal presence impossible to ignore. Dressed in a flowing black abaya, her head wrapped in a matching hijab, she looked every inch the matron of Iyanla city's most powerful family. "Iyanla," BIsola said, bowing his head in respect as she approached. I didn't expect to see you here alone." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only the cool calculation of someone who had seen and survived it all. "Chief may be gone, but I'm still here, and as long as I'm here, so are you." BIsola frowned slightly, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Iyanla, what do you mean?" Iyanla Eleniyan stepped closer, her gaze piercing as she looked up at him. Despite her age, there was a strength in her eyes that BIsola found both reassuring and intimidating. "You've done well for yourself, BIsola, better than most would have in your position. But don't forget where you came from, and don't forget who helped you get where you are." BIsola felt a pang of unease. "Iyanla, I don't understand." She took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing as she searched his face. "Let me make it clear for you, BIsola, all those dealings you had in Seattle, in Atlanta, all the way to Seattle, all the connections you made, Akeem Oloja, the money, the trade, they were mine." BIsola's eyes widened, shock rendering him momentarily speechless. "What? But how?" Iyanla's smile returned, this time tinged with something more sinister. "Akeem Oloja was one of mine, just as you were. You thought you were building something on your own, but in reality you've been under my wing the entire time. I knew where you were, who you were meeting, and what deals you were making. It was all part of the plan." BIsola's mind reeled. The realization that he had been manipulated, that every move he'd made had been anticipated and orchestrated by the woman standing before him, was staggering. Why? Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to prove yourself, Iyanla replied, her tone unyielding. Chief saw potential in you, but I needed to see if you could survive on your own, if you could handle the pressure, the risks. You did, and you've done well. But now the Chief is gone, you answer to me. BIsola's shock began to morph into something else. Admiration, respect, and a growing sense of resolve. Iyanla, I didn't know. No, you didn't, she said, her voice softening slightly. But you know now. Chief may have given you the name, but I gave you the means. You've been working for me from the moment you set foot in Seattle, USA. BIsola swallowed hard, the gravity of her words sinking in. And what now, Iyanla? What do you expect from me? Iyanla Eleniyan looked out over the grave, the cool evening breeze rustling the leaves of the nearby trees. What I expect, BIsola, is loyalty. The kind of loyalty that goes beyond mere words. You've proven yourself capable, but now you need to prove yourself trustworthy. Alea City is a dangerous place, and with Chief gone, there are those who will try to take what's ours. I need to know that you will stand with me, that you will be the force I need to keep them at bay. BIsola nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Iyanla, you have my loyalty. I've come this far, and I'm not about to stop now. Whatever you need, whatever it takes, I'm with you. She turned to him, a genuine smile breaking through her usually stern expression. Good, because we're just getting started, BIsola. The power you've tasted in Seattle, USA was just the beginning. Alea City is where the real game is played, and with you by my side, we're going to take control of this city and beyond. As they stood there side by side, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the city in twilight. In that moment, BIsola knew that his path had changed yet again. He was no longer just a man climbing the ladder of power. He was a key player in a much larger game, one that had been set in motion long before he'd ever realized. Iyanla Eleniyan was more than just a matron. She was the true power behind the throne, the woman who had shaped the man he had become. And now, with her at his side, there was nothing they couldn't achieve. Together, they would rule Alea City, and then Muguland, and woe to anyone who dared to stand in their way.
Episode 5, Kingmaker of Muguland, The Rise of Iyanla, by Dr. Opie Banwo. Before BIsola Eleniyan emerged as a force in Alea City, there was Iyanla Eleniyan, a name whispered with reverence and fear throughout the city. While her husband, Chief BIsola Eleniyan, was the public face of political power, it was Iyanla who ruled the city from the shadows. Her dominion extended beyond the affluent neighborhoods of Kokoye and Prince Charles Island into the very heart of Alea City. Its markets, where the lifeblood of the city flowed through the hands of the market women she commanded. Iyanla's influence was rooted in her early life, growing up in the bustling markets of Alea City. Born to a family of traders, she quickly rose through the ranks, becoming the undisputed leader of the market women, a position of immense power. The market women were the backbone of the city's economy, controlling the flow of goods, money, and information. And under Iyanla's leadership, they became a formidable force, one that even the most powerful politicians in Muguland dared not cross. It was said that Iyanla had eyes and ears in every corner of Alea City. The market women were not just traders, they were her informants, her enforcers, and her loyal soldiers. With their support, she could sway elections, crush her enemies, and elevate those who were loyal to her. It was this network that gave her an unparalleled reach, extending her influence far beyond what anyone could have imagined. When BIsola Eleniyan came into the picture, Iyanla saw something in him, a spark of ambition, a hunger for power that reminded her of herself. She took him under her wing, grooming him not just as her protege, but as the heir to her vast, visible, and invisible empire. But Alea City was not a city that easily accepted outsiders, and BIsola's rise was met with resistance from those who resented his presence.
Episode 6, The Kingmaker of Muguland, The Wrath of Iyanla. The first significant challenge to BIsola's legitimacy in Alea City came from a faction of indigenes, men and women who had been born and bred in the Alaya city and saw themselves as the rightful heirs to Iyanla's favor. They viewed BIsola, who hailed from Yemoja city, in the far west of Muguland, as an outsider, an interloper who had no claim to the power that Iyanla wielded. Their resentment simmered just beneath the surface, manifesting in whispers of dissent and thinly veiled threats. But Iyanla was not a woman to be trifled with. She had built her empire through a combination of shrewdness, brutality, and an unyielding will. The market women, who owed their livelihoods to her, were her most loyal subjects. They were the ones who controlled the city's economy, and they were the ones who ensured that Iyanla's word was law. She called a meeting with the leaders of the market women, gathering them in a grand hall that overlooked the city she had shaped. The women arrived in their brightly coloured IRO and buba, their faces etched with a mix of respect and apprehension. Iyanla stood at the head of the room, her presence commanding and regal. "My sisters," she began, her voice carrying the weight of authority, "Alay city is our city. We have built it with our hands and we have defended it with our strength. But there are those who would challenge our rule, who would seek to undermine the power we have fought so hard to secure." The women murmured in agreement, their eyes fixed on Iyanla. "There are those," Iyanla continued, her voice growing colder, "who believe that because BIsola was not born in Alaya city, he has no place here. They forget that I am the one who decides who belongs in this city, and I have chosen BIsola as my heir." One of the women, a respected leader among the market traders, stepped forward. "Iyanla, we are with you, but the men are stirring trouble. They say we should not follow a man who is not one of us." Iyanla's eyes flashed with anger. "The men," she spat, "will do as they are told, or they will face the consequences." The room fell silent as Iyanla's words hung in the air like a guillotine. "We built this city," she said, her voice steady and cold, "and we will not let a few jealous men tear it down. BIsola is my chosen, and anyone who challenges him challenges me." With that, Iyanla turned to one of her lieutenants, a formidable woman named Alhaja Tinuola Gawanja, who controlled the largest market in Alaya city. "Tinu, you know what needs to be done?" Alhaji Tinuola Gawanja nodded grimly. "Consider it done, Iyanla." The retribution that followed was swift and merciless. The market women, under Alhaja Gawanja's command, mobilized like an army. They spread through the city, shutting down the stalls of those who dared to oppose Iyanla's will, seizing goods and delivering harsh warnings to anyone who spoke against BIsola. The streets of Alay city buzzed with fear as the message became clear. Iyanla's rule was absolute, and BIsola was her chosen successor. But Iyanla wasn't finished. She knew that fear alone wouldn't be enough to secure BIsola's place in the city. She needed to show that he had the support of Alay city's true power brokers, the market women. In a grand gesture, Iyanla organized a public event, a celebration in the heart of the city's largest market. Thousands of people gathered to see the spectacle, the air filled with the sounds of drumming, singing, and the bustling of traders. At the center of it all stood Iyanla and BIsola side by side. As the crowd swelled around them, Iyanla raised her hands, calling for silence. "Alay city," she called out, her voice carrying over the noise. "This is my son, BIsola Eleniyan. He is not just an heir to the Eleniyan name, he is an heir to Alay city itself. From this day forward, he is one of us." The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound reverberating through the market. The market women, led by Alhaja Tinuola Gawanja, chanted BIsola's name, their voices rising in unison. It was a declaration, a public anointing that left no room for doubt. BIsola was now a legitimate power in Alaya city. As the celebrations continued, Iyanla leaned in close to BIsola, her voice barely audible over the noise. "Do you see now, BIsola? Power is not given. It is snatched by the brave and taken by the courageous. And when it is taken, it must be held with an iron grip. You have that grip now. Do not let it go." BIsola nodded, the weight of her words settling over him like a mantle. "I won't forget, Iyanla. I'll make sure of it." She smiled, a rare expression that softened her otherwise hardened features. "Good, because Alay city is ours, and anyone who challenges us will face the full wrath of the market." As the night wore on, and the celebrations continued, BIsola felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the road ahead would be dangerous, filled with enemies and obstacles, but with Iyanla and the market women by his side, he also knew that there was nothing they couldn't achieve together. Alaye City had tried to reject him, but he had been legitimized by the most powerful woman in the city. Now it was time to claim what was his, and he would do so with the full force of Iyanla Eleniyan's visible and invisible empire behind him. In the brutal world of Alaye City, power was everything, and BIsola Eleniyan was prepared to wield it with the same ruthlessness that had earned him his place at Iyanla's side.
Episode 7. The Kingmaker of Muguland, The Rise of BIsola Eleniyan, by Dr. Ope Banwo. BIsola Eleniyan had always known that the world of Alaye City was a jungle, where the strong devoured the weak and the cunning ruled over the unsuspecting. But it wasn't enough to merely survive in such an environment. To truly thrive, one had to demonstrate a capacity for ruthlessness that left no doubt as to who was in control. For BIsola, proving himself as a worthy heir to Iyanla's empire required more than just loyalty. It required action, decisive and brutal when necessary. The first test came in the form of Alhaji Durojaye, a longtime ally of Chief BIsola Eleniyan, who had transitioned into an uneasy partnership with Iyanla after the chief's death. Durojaye was a wealthy businessman with extensive connections in the oil and gas sector, but his ambitions had always been curbed by his loyalty to the Eleniyan family. However, with Chief gone and Iyanla's attention seemingly focused on solidifying BIsola's position, Durojaye began to entertain thoughts of breaking free from the Eleniyan influence. What Durojaye didn't realize was that Iyanla had eyes and ears everywhere. She knew of his growing discontent and had been waiting for the right moment to address it. BIsola, sensing an opportunity to prove himself, volunteered to handle the situation personally. "Iyanla," BIsola had said during a late-night meeting in her study, "let me deal with Durojaye. He needs to understand that loyalty is not an option, it's a requirement." Iyanla studied him, her gaze as sharp as ever. "And what do you propose to do, BIsola?" BIsola smiled, a cold, calculated expression. "I'll remind him of the cost of betrayal, but I'll do it in a way that leaves no trace of our involvement." Over the next few days, BIsola set his plan into motion. He began by subtly planting the seeds of doubt within Durojaye's inner circle, using his network of informants to suggest that the businessman was planning to defect to a rival faction. The rumors spread like wildfire, eroding the trust Durojaye's allies had in him. Then, on a quiet evening, BIsola invited Durojaye to a private meeting in a luxurious but discreet location, a penthouse suite in one of Alaye City's most exclusive hotels. Durojaye arrived, eager to discuss what he believed was a lucrative business opportunity. As they sat down over drinks, BIsola leaned in, his voice smooth and reassuring. "Alhaji, you've been a valuable partner to our family. I know you're ambitious, and I respect that, but ambition must be tempered with loyalty." Durojaye, sensing the underlying threat, tried to maintain his composure. "BIsola, I have always been loyal to the Eleniyan family. My only concern is ensuring that my business continues to thrive." BIsola nodded, a slight smile playing on his lips. "I understand, Alhaji, but there's a problem. I've been hearing things that suggest you're not as committed to our partnership as you once were." Durojaye's eyes widened, fear creeping into his voice. "BIsola, I assure you those are just rumors. I would never betray your family." BIsola's smile disappeared, his expression hardening. "I hope for your sake that's true, because betrayal is something I and Iyanla Eleniyan cannot tolerate." With that, BIsola signaled to one of his men, who handed him a file. BIsola opened it, revealing documents that implicated Durojaye in a series of financial irregularities. Irregularities that could easily be turned over to the authorities, ruining him both financially and socially. Durojaye's face paled as he realized the depth of the trap BIsola had set for him. What do you want?" he stammered. BIsola closed the file and leaned back in his chair. I want your complete and unconditional loyalty, Al-Haji. From this moment on, you answer to me. Fail to do so, and these documents find their way to the authorities. Do we understand each other? Durojaye, his hands trembling, nodded. Yes, BIsola, I understand. Good, BIsola said, standing up and extending his hand. I'm glad we could clear this up. The handshake was brief, cold, and final. As Durojaye left the suite, BIsola knew that he had secured not just the man's loyalty, but also his fear, a far more potent tool in the world of Alaye City power plays. When BIsola reported back to Iyanla, she listened intently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she simply nodded, a hint of approval in her eyes. You've done well, BIsola, she said. Durojaye was becoming a problem. Now he's a tool you forged yourself. The second test came from within the ranks of the market women themselves. Ramota Olorikunkun, a charismatic leader of one of the city's largest markets, had long been a staunch supporter of Iyanla. But as BIsola began to take on a more prominent role, Ramota grew resentful. She believed that her years of service entitled her to more influence, more control. She began to sow discord among the market women, questioning BIsola's legitimacy and hinting that perhaps it was time for a change in leadership. Word of Ramota's discontent reached BIsola, who decided to handle the matter directly. Unlike Durojaye, Ramota Olorikunkun's power base was deeply rooted in the community, making a direct confrontation more dangerous. BIsola needed to be more subtle, more strategic. He started by quietly gathering information on Ramota, her weaknesses, her vulnerabilities. It didn't take long to find one. Ramota had a son, a young man who had recently fallen into bad company, associating with a gang of area boys involved in drug trafficking. It was the leverage BIsola needed. One afternoon, BIsola arranged a meeting with Madame Ramota in one of the markets, under the preteens of discussing business. As they walked through the bustling stalls, BIsola spoke calmly, his tone measured. Madame Ramota, I've heard that you've been speaking out against me. BIsola began, not bothering with pleasantries. Ramota, taken aback by the directness of the accusation, quickly masked her surprise with a defiant expression. BIsola, I've only spoken the truth. The market women deserve a leader who understands them, someone who was born here, who shares their struggles. BIsola stopped walking and turned to face her, his eyes cold. And you think you're that leader? Ramota met his gaze, her chin raised defiantly. I've earned my place. I've served Iyanla for years. I've bled for these markets, and I don't intend to let an outsider take what belongs to us. BIsola nodded slowly, as if considering her words. Then he leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. Your son, Madame Ramota. I know what he's been up to. Ramota's defiant expression faltered, a flicker of fear crossing her face. What do you mean? I know about the gang, BIsola continued, his tone almost casual. I know about the drugs, the debts. The authorities would be very interested in that information. Ramota's eyes widened in horror. BIsola, please, he's just a boy. He's made mistakes, but he doesn't deserve... BIsola held up a hand, cutting her off. I'm not here to ruin your son's life, Madame Ramota, but I will if I have to. All I want is your loyalty. Swear it to me now, and your son's troubles disappear. Madame Ramota's resolve crumbled as she realized the position she was in. She had no choice. You have my loyalty, BIsola. I swear it. BIsola smiled, the warmth of it never reaching his eyes. Good, because I have no need for enemies, madam. Only allies. With that, the meeting was over. Madame Ramota, defeated and broken, left the market, knowing that she had lost not only the battle, but her future as a leader among the market women. BIsola had outmaneuvered her, using her greatest vulnerability against her. It was a lesson she would never forget. When BIsola reported his success to Iyanla, she listened in silence, her expression thoughtful. You've learned quickly, BIsola, she said finally. But remember this, power is not just about crushing your enemies. It's about knowing when to show mercy, when to let someone live so that they serve you. You did well with Ramota. She will be more useful to us now than she ever was before. BIsola nodded, understanding the deeper lesson Iyanla was imparting. I'll remember, Iyanla, and I'll continue to prove myself worthy of the trust you've placed in me. As he left Iyanla's presence that night, BIsola knew that he had crossed another threshold. He was no longer just a protege. He was becoming a force in his own right, a man who could command loyalty and instill fear with equal ease. The streets of Alaye City were treacherous, but BIsola Eleniyan was proving that he was more than capable of navigating them.
Born in the land of riches, gold, oil, diamond bright. But our streets are stained with blood, but the youth fight for their rights. Protesting for a future, yet they're slaughtered in the night. While the leaders sit in silence, flying private jets in flight. They drive their bulletproof cars while we walk these streets. Say there's no money, but their jets fly with ease. Our children starve, but they're too blind to see. Muguland, why can't we be free?